Hey makers, this is Dhruvin and I welcome you all to my Power BI step-by-step tutorial series. You are watching 9th episode of this series and today I am going to talk about what is measure in the world of Power BI and what are the use cases where we should use measure. So without further delay, let's get started. And also, as always, don't forget to follow me on my Twitter and Instagram. So first of all, let me just take you through the background that we have learned in some of the previous classes from the same series. In our previous classes, we have already created one of the thing into our data model, which is calculated column. If I just open my data model that we have built in our previous session, this is what we have observed over here. Specifically for the relationship column, we created this type of calculated column inside our data model. Now, the way we have written the calculated column, it is also uses some sort of DAX formula. Okay, but over here, the thing is that calculated columns are executed row by row. So even if you look at the formula, here we concatenated basically two string in our previous class as a calculated column. So whenever you create any kind of calculated column in the behind the scene model, basically if you observe this thing, it is creating the physical column over here into our Power BI report, which is occupying some sort of space into your Power BI report file. While measure is little bit different than that. Measure is not performed at the row context. Generally, measures are something which is dynamically created the output when you add that into visualization. So actually it will not add any space into your data model. Now, before we enter into the world of measure, let me just explain you some of the theoretical concept about the measure. So in the world of Power BI, a measure is a DAX expression which is used to perform the calculation on your data model such as sum, average, count or any complex logic if you want to perform it out. Unlike calculated columns, measures are dynamic. As I explained you that calculated column always occupy some sort of space while this is completely dynamic. They react on the filter and slicers applied on the report. So basically it follows the filter context by default in the measure level. Now let me explain you some of the key reasons why should you use measures inside the world of Power BI. So the first advantage of that, efficient memory usage. Basically it's stored in the metadata not as a physical column. Okay, so basically it will only executed when it is called. So let's say if you have added any measures into any visualization, when that visualization is going to render, at the time only it is going to be executed. Okay, it keeps report responsive and dynamic and basically it auto calculates based on the filters and context. So let's say on your visualization you are having 5 slicers or maybe you are having interaction on the other visualization, so it automatically applies that thing on the measure. It will not stop on that particular part. Obviously exceptions are there. If you want to stop it, there are some sort of DAX expression available, but by default that is the mechanism. And basically it is the best practices to perform the calculation on the semantic model level. So many times there are situations where we need to do on the fly calculation, like let's say sometimes you want to do MTD, YTD, last year versus this year, right? If you want to do all those calculation, obviously you need to write some measures for that. At the time row by row calculation will not work for you. At the time you want to make it dynamically depending on the filters, slicers available on your page. Alright, now let me just talk about some of the example of the measure and what are the syntax for that particular one. Okay, so generally if you want to write any particular measure, the very first thing is that simple syntax is that you need to provide first name of the measure. So let's say I want to calculate any kind of sales over here, so I can just write my measure as total sales, and inside that I can just provide some sort of DAX function over there, like okay, sum and which column of sum you want to make it, like your table name and then your column name. That's what you basically supply it. Okay, so again there are so many DAX expression available inside the world of Power BI. If I talk about the overall DAX, if I need to cover whole of the DAX thing, it's another 4 hours of a mega class like that. Okay, I have a dedicated playlist on the DAX expressions on the different functions. If you wanted to look at that out, or maybe if you are more interested into it, a link is available in the description box. You can check it out more into that. But what I would prefer is, while you are watching this series, completely finish the watching the series, so at least you will be reaching to the base level that okay, what exactly this whole Power BI is all about and what you can achieve with that. Then go into in-depth concept that will make your learning process faster, rather than pausing at this point and going to the DAX playlist and follow all the formula, because that is not the way to go. Because we are living in an era where we are having so many AI tools, we are having so many information available on the internet, using which you can easily prepare your DAX formula. Okay, the thing is that you need to only cover up about the basic concept over here. So this is the syntax, like how you can write your simple DAX formula over here. Okay, some another complex functions are like, okay, here we are having one more calculate function. Inside that we are finding total sales, and basically we are just writing some sort of formula inside that. Okay, current year sales data, let's say if you just want to find out, so this is the formula, like sales this year is equal to calculate total sales and year of order date is equal to 2 days. So basically whatever your current year is, based on that it show you that particular sales year data. I know it's still confusing for you because it's more theoretical, we will see it practically, so you will get better context around that, but just wait for that. Alright, so this is like a basic syntax. Syntax is simple, name of the measure, and then what formula you want to use it out over there. That's the simplest formula in the DAX measure. Now let me talk about, there are different type of measures available inside the Power BI. Let me tell you, from the day one itself you have used measure knowingly or unknowingly. You don't aware about that, but actually it was a measure. Let me give you some example so you will get a better context around that. So basically in the world of Power BI we are mainly having two type of measure. Number one is implicit measure and number two is explicit measure. Now what do we mean by implicit measure? So basically implicit measures are created when you are dragging the numeric fields inside your visualization, and explicit measures are something which is created manually using the DAX, and generally this is something which we haven't created so far, but implicit measure you have created multiple times. Let me show you how. So if you look at my Power BI report over here, right, if you recall my previous session that we have done into the same class, right, we have added a revenue and sum of grand total of the revenue, right? If you recall that thing, generally what we have done is, revenue was our numeric column. We drag that column, and from here you are able to change sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, like this, right? So what is this? This is the example of implicit measure. So whatever summarization that you are doing for your numeric field over here, by default all of those are the implicit measure, and those implicit measure you are already showing into your Power BI table in this particular fashion. Okay, same way like you did this grand total of percentage revenue. So if you look at it out, this is what we have done at that time. We click on the column, we click on show as a value and percentage of grand total. What is that? This is nothing but an example of implicit measure. So actually you haven't written the formula, but Power BI automatically support those kind of summarization, so they are considered as implicit measure inside the world of Power BI. And explicit measure, obviously in this class we are going to create it out, so you will get a better context around that. Okay, now let me talk about two important terminology again with respect to interview preparation and all. That is again a very important topic. Many times people are asking about two important terminology over here, like what is row context and what is filter context in the world of Power BI. So let me tell you. So row context is basically referring the context of a single row in a table. It is created automatically when in calculated columns or inside iterative functions, like whenever you are having any kind of X function like sum X or filter or add columns, this row context is being applied automatically. So what is row context? So simply let me tell you, row by row the calculations are executing. Okay, that is considered as a row context. Let's say for an example, you are having quantity and you are having the value for unit price, and let's say if you just want to create a column that unit price multiply by quantity, so that is what it is, row by row execution, right? And whatever formula that you are writing over there as a calculated column and all, it basically follows the row context, row by row calculation. Okay, and what is filter context? Again, before we move to the filter context, few points we need to consider over here. So think of looping through each row. Same thing which I explained over here, it just mentioned as a part of key points over here. Okay, and quantity into unit price, that's we also discuss about. and row context knows which row it's operating on, and you don't need to use any kind of filter to apply it, basically automatically taking the filter as well from your Power BI report. So let's say you have one report and in which you are having one table, okay, and you are having this kind of total cost formula. Row by row it automatically executed. Again on the top, if you apply some sort of filter, it automatically take that effect as well over there for that calculated column. Okay, now what is filter context? Filter context refers to the set of filters applied to the calculation coming from slicers, visual filter, page or report level filter, or DAX functions like calculate and a much more thing. So basically define what subset of data a measure should operate on. Okay, so filter context is again like it is like a set of filter. As I said, on your report page, if you are having multiple filters over there, you know, it taking the effect of that filtering as well automatically over there. Okay, now measures are always operate in the filter context, and you can modify the filter context using calculate all this kind of function. So sometimes, you know, you have a requirement that okay, you created some sort of measure, but you know, you don't want to apply any kind of filtering effect on top of that, or maybe any kind of filters which are impacting or of your report. It should not impact of your measure. At the time, you can always use some sort of function like formula like all function with some sort of calculated and this kind of combination, which basically avoid the filter context effect from your measure. So basically it's fully dynamic and changes based on what visuals or slicer the user is interacting with. Okay, so this is all about the filter context. So if I compare about the row context versus filter context, basically row context apply to the individual row, while it is applied to the data based on the filter, calculated columns and different kind of X function like sum X, average X. These are some example of row context. Measures are the example of the filter context. Row context is created during the row by row calculation. Filter context via visual slicers, DAX filter function, and row context not modifiable directly, while filter context can be modified via calculated all filter, different kind of this kind of expression over here. Okay, and if we talk about the common use cases for writing a measure, so you can write different formula to calculate different kind of things like, okay, if sometimes you want to calculate the total revenue or maybe average rating or count of order or percentage of growth or YTD or running total, any kind of this requirement you can always achieve with the measure formula inside the world of Power BI. All right, now we talked about the theory over here. Now let's see the practical implementation of the measure and see how this filter context, row context is relating inside the world of DAX measure. So here I am on my Power BI report, and this is the report that we have prepared in our previous session. Now over here, let me do one more important thing. Let's say for an example, here I do have my sales data. Let me find out the sales for the previous year inside the world of Power BI. Many times you are having some sort of date filter over here. So let me just add some sort of date filter over here on my screen. So I am adding one slicer visualization over here. Alright, and let me just add one date column over here. So I'm just adding my date column over here. Alright, and let me just make this date column over here into this kind of date hierarchy. Alright, and now let me do one thing. What I want to implement here is, whenever I am selecting any particular year, I want to find out its previous year sales, as well as I want to compare that sales with year-on-year growth as well. Okay, so let's say right now I have selected my 2021. Okay, so 2021, you can see that I have this much of revenue at this point. Okay, but over here in the same matrix, I also want to see during the same time period what was the sale in the 2020, and I wanted to show it somehow over here. Now over here we need to use measure for that particular calculation, because with calculated column you cannot be able to achieve this, because calculated column always be applied at the row context level, and over here basically we need to follow filter context, as well as when we add into your visualization it follow your row context as well. Alright, so how can we start with that journey? By creating our DAX measure. So let's get started. Let's say in the world of Power BI, if you want to create any measure, simply right click on the table over here, and at the time there is an option available, new measure over here. click on that. As soon as you open the new measure, it just opened the formula bar like this. You can increase and decrease the font size by pressing the center key of your mouse. Now over here, the first thing is that you need to provide the name of your formula. So let's say here I just want to find out the previous year sales. So I'm just making my formula over here like previous year sales. So let me just make it up into this fashion, PY sales, PY sales. Okay, and basically what I want to implement here is I want to implement the sum of revenue, and I want to have that revenue for the last year. Okay, so I'm using a function called calculate. In calculate function, first of all, I need to use a formula for sum of revenue column. So as soon as you type your formula, it is basically showing you the different column over here. So I'm choosing the revenue column from my sales table. So let me just press tab and let me choose that column. So I'm doing the sum from my revenue table. And now for which date range I want to do that particular sales. I want to do this sales same period last year. Okay, and last year I mean whatever date range selection you have done in your slicer, same period last year, what was the sales that was I wanted over here. So I can use the function same period last year. So basically it will give me the revenue of sales, overall sum of the revenue for the last year sales. And over here you need to supply the date range. So I'm supplying date range from my date table. So I'm just providing over here like date column over here. Finish the bracket and finish the bracket, and once you are done, hit enter key, or you can simply click on this commit key over here, and basically this will give you the previous year sales for yourself. And here I am. You can see that my previous year sales has been created successfully. Again, remember one thing, whenever you are using this kind of measure, basically it will create the calculator icon over here. So whenever you see this kind of calculator icon in your model, your mind should immediately tell you that this is what you created as a measure. While in calculated column, basically this is the symbol like table and then fx like this. So this is like calculated column, and calculator is like a measure. Okay, so remember that particular thing over here. Now we created one measure over here. Now let's add that measure at your table level and see what kind of output it is giving to you over here. Alright, so over here you can see sum of revenue, we are already having it. And now let me drag my measure over here for previous year sales. So I'm just dragging that column over here in my matrix, and this is how it looks like over here. Like over here you can see 10 million, and over here you can see that this is what for previous year. This is like current year, and this is like a previous year, current year, and this is like a previous year. Okay, so basically this is what you can see it over here. Even if you do for 2020, so you know, whichever date range you will select here, depending on that it is just showing you the value over here according to it. Okay, so whichever year you will select, according to that it will just show you the previous year data as well to you. Okay, and even if you just wanted to make it more much better, you can just make it like this: your previous year sales and your current year sales, right? This is how it looks like. Even let's say if you just wanted to make it like this way, like decimal point, you just want to make it like a 2 decimal, you know, just make it like a 2 decimal, so it just showing the proper way over here, and this is how it looks like. All right, now let me do one more important thing over here, that okay, I added my previous year sales over here. Now I want to see the year-on-year growth over as well, that with respect to previous year, this year how much progress you have done, and that year-on-year growth I wanted to show in some sort of percentages over here into the same matrix table. Okay, for that what I want to write as a formula is basically whenever you want to find out the year-on-year growth, basically how you can find it out. So basically you just subtract your current year revenue minus your previous year revenue and divide it via your previous year's sales. Okay, and that is something which is giving you the final year-on-year growth. Okay, so let me create a measure for that. For that, again I'm right clicking on that and clicking on new measure over here. And now let me just provide the formula over here. You can always make your measure box bigger if you want. And now let me just provide over here year on year growth, and I'm just using the percentage over here because I need that in percentage. Okay, now here what's the formula I want to use? I want to use the divide formula. Okay, and numerator I just wanted to use as revenue, I mean current year revenue minus previous year revenue. So current year revenue I can easily get it from sum of revenue from the sales table minus I want to use here like previous year sales, which we already created as a measure, so I'm just using that, and divided by basically previous year sales. Okay, that's what I want to do. Finish the bracket and hit enter. Okay, and your year on year growth formula has also been created over here. Now let's drag this formula into our matrix visualization. So over here I have my matrix. Let me just make it bigger over here. Let me make it smaller a little bit. Okay, and now let me just drag this measure over here. So as soon as you add this measure, this is how it looks like. Alright, now over here if you are observing this, currently it is not showing the like a proper percentage. It's just showing like 0.15 or 0.19 and like this, right? If you want it in a proper fashion, just select your measure from here. So I'm just selecting my measure over here from the data pane, and over here when you go to the measure tools, you will be able to see an option called percentage. Click on that. As soon as you do that, it will basically converting this to the percentage, and now it is showing the proper percentage over here to you. So you can clearly see here that okay, for overall this mixed category, this is your previous year, this is your current year, and approximately 13% of growth you have shown year on year. For this one, it's a negative growth because last year it was more and this year it is less, so it is in the negative. Over here you can see that it's a growth of 10%, so it's showing me that, and over here like okay 10, and over here like this almost 7% of year on year growth you are observing over here. Alright, so this is how you can simply write up your DAX measure for yourself. Okay, now with this way you can write out any complex measure if you wanted to have it for yourself. And as I explained, this measure is taking impact of anything. Let's say if you are selecting any stuff from here, or maybe let's say if you are having any additional filter as well in your report, it will take effect of everything over here because measures by default follow the filter context. Okay, now finally that's what all about I wanted to cover up for this DAX measure classes. But now it's a quiz time, so check your knowledge with the quiz question, and you just need to answer those questions in the comment section, so at least I know so far everyone is following with me. So the first question is, what is row context in the Power BI? Option A filter applied by a slicer. Option B, a context created by the visual. Option C, a context for each row of the table. And D, a way to change the filter behavior. Question 2 is, which DAX function creates the row context? Option A, sum. Option B, calculate. Option C, SUMX. Option D, selected value. Third question here is, what is filter context? Option A loop through all the rows, a way to format the visual, the filter applied to a visual or a measure, and D, a calculated column context. Question 4 is, which of the following DAX function modifies the filter context? Option A, sum. Option B, calculate. Option C, concatenate X. And option D, divide. Alright, answer the question in the comment section. And the last question is, in which of the following is row context not automatically present? Option A, calculated column. Option B, measure. Option C, SUMX. Option D, filter. Alright, all the answers you need to provide in the comment section, and let's see how many of you are giving the right answers. So that's it for today. If you are for the first time to my channel, make sure you hit thumbs up and subscribe my channel. If you are looking for any live training program from me, I am conducting different training program every month. So you can always check out our website for the latest training information and enroll yourself. With this is Dhruvin signing off. See you in the next session with some amazing video. Till then, don't forget to follow me on my Instagram and Twitter, and see you in the next session with some amazing content.